No. With all due respect to the great Hakeem Olajuwon, he should not be ahead of Shaquille O'Neal. A lot of people will point to the 95 finals when Hakeem definitely outplayed Shaq and they swept the Orlando Magic. But Shaq was a baby. It was his third year in the league. Nobody holds the fact that Tim Duncan outplayed LeBron, even though they didn't go head-to-head in 2007. LeBron was a baby in the league as well at that point. And even if you look at that series, now obviously Houston swept them, but Shaq averaged more rebounds, more assists, more blocks, shot 60% from the field compared to Hakeem's 48%. And Hakeem just outscored him by 5 points, 33 a game to 28 a game for Shaq. So it wasn't like Shaq just got outclassed and embarrassed in that finals. Overall, Nick, Shaq is the architect or the leader, the bus driver, as Barkley might call him, he's the only player to lead a three-peat other than Michael Jordan since Bill Russell's Celtics in the 60s. That has to speak for something. Yeah. You yourself have said that 3-year finals run was arguably the best 3-year finals run in the history of the game. He was absolutely dominant.
As anyone ever.
And then I would counter with Hakeem's first ring came when, let's just face it, the best player in the world was playing minor league baseball. I would even argue that for the second ring, but you wouldn't, so we don't even have to go there. But certainly the first ring, Michael Jordan was playing baseball. I do think Jordan's Bulls would have beaten Olajuwon. Jordan never had trouble with bigs. He beat Ewing. He beat Shaq. He beat Alonzo Mourning consistently. So I think that has to weigh into the argument as well. I'll give you Hakeem, better defender and shot blocker, better rebounder than Shaq. But Shaq was obviously the much better scorer, scored a lot more than Hakeem did. And, Nick, I just think sometimes part of it comes down to Shaq's size. He was so big that he impacted the way defenses had to guard him and his teams more so than Olajuwon did, strictly because he was so big and powerful.
I don't know that I agree with you that Shaq was the far better scorer. The regular season, Shaq averages 2 more points per game, but the playoffs, Hakeem averages 2 more points per game. The thing with Hakeem is the greatest defensive player since Bill Russell. The only guy close is Tim Duncan. And Shaq was at times very good and at times average defender, and their offensive numbers are almost identical. Shaq's 8th all-time in points, Hakeem's 12th all-time in points. Now, I understand career totals are not everything, but it just gives you some context that it's not like Hakeem during his 10-year playoff prime for a decade in the postseason. What was he? Oh, he was 28, 11, 3, 2, and 3 over a decade in the postseason. I think you are understating a bit how badly Hakeem did outplay Shaq in those finals. You're right. Shaq was young, but Shaq, much like Hakeem, was a 4th-place MVP finisher in year 2. These guys were instantly dominant in the league. Hakeem in year 2 took a team to the finals. Some people argue it's the greatest team ever. The 86 Celtics took them 6 games. And in those finals, Hakeem was 33, 12, 6, 2, and 2. Yes, with Ralph Sampson. And Shaq won his titles with Kobe Bryant and then Dwayne Wade. It is hard to win championships if you don't have great players alongside you. And I also think it does matter. I understand some folks believe Jordan's Bulls would have beaten the Rockets. I disagree. The Rockets had great success against them in the regular season when Jordan was active, and I don't think they had any answer for Hakeem Olajuwon whatsoever. And Jordan's Bulls lost to Shaq's Magic that Hakeem swept. But set that aside. During those 2 years, who were the guys in the league that didn't have rings? Clyde, Barkley, Shaq, Robinson, Stockton, Malone. Hakeem beat all of those guys. Beat Barkley twice en route to rings. Beat Stockton, Malone twice en route to rings. Beat Clyde, and then Clyde joined him. Beat Robinson. Robinson got his ring later. Beat Ewing. Beat Shaq. Those are his 8 playoff series. So he denied all of those guys rings, not just by winning the titles, but by beating them in the postseason. And I think I think if their offense is anywhere close, and their offense was incredibly close, Shaq was more efficient, but they scored at the same volume and they rebounded the same. Hakeem's defense has to put it over the top, Brew. Hakeem is the greatest defensive player of the last 50 years, hands down. I'm surprised that you don't think that puts it over the top.
No. Hakeem led teams to 3 finals? 3 finals.
Yes.
Shaq was in 6 finals. Shaq averaged, this is why I said he was a better scorer. He shot 58% from the field for his career. Hakeem shot 51%, which is good, but still, difference. And Shaq had 10 straight years of averaging 26 or more points. Shaq led the league in scoring twice. Hakeem never led the league in scoring and only averaged more than 26 4 times. So I think those factors, the fact that Shaq led more teams to the finals or played in more finals, and even when Hakeem had a super team with Barkley, who was 23-11 the year before he went to the Rockets and was 19-15 in his first year with the Rockets. And Drexler and Hakeem were still great players when those 3 teamed up, and they didn't get it done. They lost in the conference finals that year to Utah. Then they kept losing when Barkley was there, and then Pippen replaced Drexler. So he didn't capitalize on that super team either. And whereas Shaq, they at least got to the finals when he brought on that older Peyton and Malone.
Yeah, they lost
who were older
in 5.
than Barkley and Drexler. But they still at least got to the finals. And I would say they were at a later stage of their career, Peyton and Malone, than Barkley and Drexler were.
Yeah, agreed. But he also had nothing close to a young, early 20s prime Kobe Bryant, which Shaq had in that 04 team, and they lost. Now, Kobe was not good in those finals. But listen, I want to make this part clear. Because, again, we are in the absolute... I have Shaq 9th of the last 50 years, and I have Hakeem 8th. This is not a knock at Shaq. Bruce said it, and I want to restate it. I think apex prime Shaquille O'Neal, if you are saying you can have any player in NBA history for a series at their peak, I would take Shaq over LeBron. I would take Shaq over Jordan. I would take Shaq over Kareem. Prime, peak Shaquille O'Neal is the most unstoppable player in basketball history. Those 3 finals that you mentioned, his numbers were across them 36 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks on 60% shooting across 3 consecutive finals and 3 straight finals MVPs. The problem for Shaq is he did not stay at that apex nearly long enough. Again, he's long enough to be one of the guys in the top 10, but not long enough. Hakeem's peak was essentially his 2nd year in the league until a decade later when they won the 2nd title. That 10-year run, he is unbelievable. He's 28 a game in the postseason. He didn't have a single bad postseason series. He was dominant for 10 years. And the reason the Rockets didn't win more early on was once Sampson got hurt, it was a terrible team. Hakeem lost a playoff series one year where he averaged 37-17 with 5 blocks a game, lost in 4 in round 1 because the team around him was so bad. Hakeem's peak was longer than Shaq's, and he's the greatest defensive player ever. Or of the last 50 years.
No, his peak wasn't longer than Shaq's. Shaq's peak began his first year in the league as well. I mean, so you kind of tried to say Hakeem had this decade-long peak, but Shaq only had a 3-year peak? No, Shaq. In fact, statistically, his first and second years were some of his best years of his career. If you want to say they weren't peak Shaq years because they didn't win a finals, then I could say the same thing about Olajuwon, but for those 2 years when he did win the finals, one of which Michael Jordan wasn't even playing. So that's disingenuous to say Hakeem had a 10-year peak and Shaq had a 3-year peak? Really? Shaq's peak was his whole career up until he got older.
Okay, so I disagree with that. I think Shaq was excellent, was one of the 5 best players in the league by year 2. I think Shaq's true peak, which is higher than Hakeem's, was that 3-year championship run in LA.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.